This is a chart of foreign purchase of U.S. bonds. Frankly, U.S. Treasuries have been the go-to assets for global portfolio managers for the better part of 20 years. They've particularly been attracted to them as a safe haven in so-called risk-off periods. Look at the period surrounding the great financial crisis. Look at all the green above the line. Something stunning happened last March. In the middle of the equity meltdown, foreigners aggressively sold treasuries as we proposed the CARES Act. So I'll never forget it. Right in the middle of the worst part of the equity meltdown in the third week of March, there was an 18-point decline in the bond market. We didn't know what it was at the time, but we found out months later through Fed accounts that foreigners had sold $1 trillion worth of bonds in response to the CARES Act. Again, this has never happened before, but they are watching our behavior, most of which I've outlined in the last 5 or 10 minutes, and they're frankly saying no mas. Asians and others have been purchasing Chinese assets who have done no QE and much less fiscal stimulus in response to COVID, and they're doing just fine, thank you very much. With China representing 20% of world GDP and only 1.6% of global portfolios, and the US representing 25% of GDP, but 28% of world portfolios. Remember, China 1.6%. This process is probably early rather than late. And the last thing the US needs is interest rate burdens. As the last few administrations have refused to mitigate the growth in entitlements, knowing that we were entering a great boom as baby boomers turned 65, debt to GDP was already set to cross 100% in the next decade. I mentioned earlier I'd been to USC before. Back in 2013, it was part of my college tour to outline the problem of the gray boom. Basically, since the Great Society, various programs have increased entitlements per person in the United States dramatically. What I was worried about back in 2013 is guys like me and Sheldon that were born a few years after World War II were all about to turn 65, and there was a lot of us. It was called the baby boom, and it was about to turn into a gray boom. The problem is Social Security and Medicare were on a pay-as-you-go system, and as we were about to receive all these benefits, there was less workers available to provide it. That was the problem I outlined back then. We are now throwing $6 trillion of extra spending into the pot just as the gray boom accelerates. Ironically, one of the answers I would give when I was inevitably asked what to do about the problem, I said we should raise the age of Medicare. People are living longer, people are healthier. The Biden administration is requesting to lower the age of Medicare to 60, creating a $400 billion hole in the name of infrastructure. I mean, seriously, you can't make it up. All of this spending has been encouraged by the Fed and aided and abetted by QE and low rates to finance it. There is no way bond yields would not have gone up without the Fed financing all the things that I've been showing the last 5 or 10 minutes. But look at this chart. The CBO projects that the new debt level, despite drastic cuts in the growth of non-entitlement spending, that's the gray line, will result in interest expense of 27% per year if the 10-year rate was to normalize to 4.9%. Simply put, the system cannot handle it, so the Fed will be forced to monetize it. Think about that, 27% of GDP just in interest costs alone. That's basically all the money we've spent in COVID relief in the last 12 months. Like many post-war periods, this will inevitably lead to inflation and financial repression by central banks, despite not having had to finance a major war. I believe we have crossed the Rubicon. And this is the only solution for this unnecessary and self-inflicted situation from this radical monetary and fiscal policy I've outlined. Currently, 85% of the world's transactions are done in dollars. I think we have crossed the Rubicon, as I said, and for the first time in my career, I believe we will lose this reserve currency status and all the benefits that come with it within 15 years. I've never said this before. I've never even thought it before. At present, there is no alternative because of the lack of the trust in the communist dictatorship in China and the mess that Europe currently is. I don't know who's going to replace us, but my best guess is the biggest threat is a crypto-derived ledger system that will be invented by a group from an army of engineers leaving universities, like USC. I will conclude my remarks with how my family office is positioned given this backdrop.